The latest news and talk, hot, fresh, and delivered when you want it. Power 98.7. Now we're talking.
We are indeed talking, and as we do on a Monday at this time, we are talking tech in our tech hour. And here it is. This is quite an extraordinary story. So, news broke of a massive 16 billion data breach that exposed login credentials from Apple, Google, Facebook, and now it has been described as one of the largest data breaches in history. Cyber News reports that records from over 30 databases have been stolen, with each containing up to 3.5 billion passwords from social media and VPN logins to corporate platforms and developer platforms. The recent data breach also contains a massive amount of information that can affect billions of online accounts, as cyber criminals now have access to a mass amount of login credentials. This puts users at a risk of further malicious behavior from phishing attacks, social engineering, and identity theft. This sounds rather horrific. Let's get some perspective from tech expert Modiwa Kavaza joining us on the line again. Good evening to you, and thanks so much for being with us.
Always good to talk to you.
All right, this sounds pretty bad, actually. How bad is it? Put things into perspective here. What are we dealing with? I mean, these are some of the biggest platforms. When you're talking about Apple, Google, Facebook. These are no small entities.
Yeah, so definitely it has been a huge revelation out there, in the world, and it's definitely cause for concern, for people, out there, because we're all on online platforms. We're all, using all of these things, whether it's for banking, social media. Our lives are all online, so the passwords, the security that we put around that is very important. So to hear about these 16 billion logins being exposed is definitely something that's definitely cause for concern. The only thing that is a bit tricky at the moment, based on the research that I've done since this came out. I remember when it was first reported a few days ago. Is that you've got some people who think of this as a breach, of the three platforms that you just spoke about, Google,
Yes.
Facebook and Apple. But in other corners, what they're actually saying, happened is that people unknowingly would have downloaded pieces of unknown software onto their computers, and those pieces of software would have basically sifted through their online activity on their computer machine and browsers, and been able to figure out their passwords, and then that information gets sent to one of these databases, and that's the information that's actually out in the public today.
It's a lot. Now, the companies that were mentioned that I listed as having been hit, what do they have in common? I mean, or could it be that it's so completely random, and then yet they hit these very large entities?
So that's the most interesting thing, that's actually happening here, and that's why I said, on the one hand, you've got people that believe that the three companies were actually breached, and then that data is what went out. Whereas some of the more nuanced understanding out there is actually it's people's, individual machines that were actually infiltrated, and then that information then, goes out there. Now, whether it's either of the two, the net effect is the same, right? And it's almost the same as when, on the one hand, if you work for an organization, let's say a corporate, sometimes what some people will do is that they will try and attack the company itself. But in many instances, the weakest point is an individual who works at the company. You infiltrate their machine, now you have an access path into, the wider universe of that particular company. And in essence, that's more or less where we, find ourselves now, that you have people that were going out and, individually getting all of these pieces of information, sending it to these databases. One of these logins from the research that I've done, each one of these logins is sold at $1 each.
Yo. Wow.
On some of these trading platforms that are there, because we're in 2025 and now they're trading platforms for your data.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it just shows you, what people are doing and
Unbelievable.
how crazy it is to be operating online. So, and like I said, the net effect is that people should act in terms of going out and just making sure that they've got the right levels of security, change passwords, put in multi-factor authentication, and then, let's keep it going from there.
Yeah, it is just quite remarkable what goes into this. And I was going to say, though, is it not even in the least bit embarrassing that the tech giants such as this should have been hit in such a way? You would expect them to have the very best of security systems in place.
And I think that point that you're making, it goes directly back to what we've said just now. The fact that you as Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, you as Apple and Tim Cook, you as Google, and Sundar Pichai, and all of that, you can invest in the best systems, the best cloud infrastructure. You can have data centers in Ireland, in South Africa, the US, all of this very sophisticated stuff. But at the individual level, each one of us who makes up their user bases, I think with Meta, they're estimated at around 4 billion users, that are out there. And a lot of the time, I think when it comes to Meta, I'll just look at Meta specifically because it's the one that a lot of people tend to use with Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp.
Sure.
A lot of people are getting hacked, let's say on WhatsApp. A lot of people get hacked on Facebook specifically. You as an individual, you get attacked as one, but then you wreak havoc, on the rest of, on the rest of the platform. So this is one of those situations where you can be a big tech giant and you can have the best security, but that security is only as good as what we as the individuals on the platforms are doing with our individual activity and individual machines.
All right. So you've put out the warning there about the measures that we can take as individuals. Can you just elaborate a little bit more? You talk about this two-factor authentication. I mean, is it there available on all these platforms? I know there are some that will actually highlight it, but I don't know whether is it standard now.
So there's a couple of things that are happening in that particular space right now. The two most basic pieces of advice that are being given is, firstly, change passwords, just so that, you are safe. And then secondly, turn on multi-factor authentication. Most of the platforms, have this in place. It tends to come in different forms. So two-factor or multi-factor simply means that in addition to your password, there will be another layer of security that's either tied to an email account, a phone number, maybe even a device. And they'll say, for example, okay, you want to log into let's say your Google account. We've seen that you've been using it on your computer. You now want to log in on a phone. Just to confirm that it's you, just, click what we've just sent to you on the device that you're already using it, just as an extra layer. Others will use the SMS. Others will have a call, actually, that can, a robotic call can come into your phone, and then you input whatever information. That's the two things. The other one is that a lot of people are now saying, actually, guys, there's a big debate to say passwords are probably not effective anymore, because they're so easily breached and all that.
Sure.
And now there's
Yeah.
this movement towards things like your keychains, and also these passwords that are auto-generated by the service. So Apple, for example, has a service called Sign In with Apple, right, where they will create a dummy account, a dummy password, all of this stuff, so that you don't have to input your personal information when opening certain types of accounts, right? That's one of the ways people are trying to protect themselves.
Okay.
And then I think just the last thing for people to know, there are platforms such as HudsonRock.com, and also Have I Been PWNED, or Have I Been Pawned, where people can actually go, put in your email address, and check what databases it actually appears in. It will tell you whether your email is in one of these notorious data sets.
Oh my goodness! You better repeat that information again, man. Madiba, wow.
Yeah,
Yes.
so the two platforms, and I know that there are a couple of others, but
Okay.
just for quick ones, there's one called Have I Been Pawned, and pawned is PWNED. It's basically hacker jargon. PWN is hacker jargon for conquer or dominate.
Okay.
So if you search that, it will take you to the website. You can put in your email address, and it will tell you whether or not your email address has been compromised, or whether it appears on one of these dark web data sets. The other platform to use is HudsonRock.com.
HudsonRock.com.
Yes.
Okay. As in Rock Hudson. Yeah. I see what they did there. Okay, no, awesome. This, I'm sure, will be quite useful. But gosh, this is, and then you just say, change your passwords. You know what a schlep it is to change passwords, and how many passwords a person has. And one even ends up with similar passwords, because it's so easy to forget all these bloody passwords.
It definitely is. And because of that, there's actually been I'm going to call it a cottage industry of password managers, password manager pieces of software, that have come up, over time. But you can actually go nowadays, because I usually advise people to just use what they have, because that's the thing that most people are going to make use of. Very few people are actually going to go out and download something separate. That's just not how things work. So if you are on an iOS device, there's actually an app. It's literally called Passwords, where basically if you log into something, because of the schlep that you just spoke about, on your Apple device, it will ask you when you log into certain platforms, certain services, to say, do you want us to save this password for you in a keychain and encrypt it for you on your device? Now, whenever you come back and have to log into this thing, you no longer have to put in your username, passwords, all of this stuff. You can literally just use your fingerprint, your Face ID, one of those, and it will automatically do it for you. So it creates like an extra layer of security for you, because a person isn't, as much as they're trying to breach you, they would have to first breach Apple's password keeper first before they can find you. I know that on Android devices, Samsung specifically, they also have a similar platform. I believe it's called Samsung Pass, that people can use. If you want, you can actually go out and look for a specific password manager. There are a couple of platforms that are out there that people can use. Just log in, it keeps your information, and it saves you from having to go in and out in that schlep, because that's what hackers count on, the fact that it's a schlep. and
Mm.
all they're waiting for is for you to slip up, and they're in.
Yeah, yeah. And it seems to be a lot easier than one actually thought of, how these guys how they get it right. This kind of thing. And I mean, would have this kind of thing been, is this count as, would it have been for ransom, or how would it have played out?
For something like this, one of the things that I think people should really be aware of, and this was made quite clear to me by attending a number of workshops by some of the cybersecurity companies, such as Trend Micro, such as Checkpoint, is that we need to stop thinking about hackers with that old view of, the male awkward figure who sits in their mom's basement
Mm,
with a hoodie over their head, and think about the fact that these are well-resourced corporate organizations.
mm,
People, these criminal enterprises have become corporatized. People are clocking in and clocking out. They have buildings. People are going in for work. It's a 9 to 5 for a lot of these
mm,
people. They actually showed an interesting statistic that in the United States there is breaching or hacking activity all the time, but on July the 4th you tend to see a dip because even the hackers are going, on holiday because of the 4th of July, right? So
mm,
we need to stop thinking about hackers from that point of view. They are well resourced. They
mm.
know what they're doing. Everyone is fair game. It's not just big corporates or big entities or governments anymore. It's all of our data. That's one. Two, to the point that I made to you earlier on, there are a lot of these data trading platforms that people will be selling these logins on. And you heard what I said, in certain instances, you're doing $1 per login. So you can imagine if one of these data sets was doing 3.5 billion logins each to
Sure.
reach the 16 billion that we're talking about.
Oh,
That's a lot of economic activity
yeah,
that's happening that we are not even aware of.
yeah.
And then down the line, that's when you can get into a situation where either you as an individual or a company actually, gets breached. One of these bad actors buys this information, they go in, they hack one of your platforms,
Mm,
and then they possibly encrypt it and say, "Hey, we'll only give this back to you if you pay a ransom."
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
So, and down the line, right now, they say that ransomware or this ability to go out and look for ransoms is the biggest threat when it comes to cybersecurity, particularly in countries like South Africa, which is the most attacked country on the continent.
oh, that's, yeah. So it's the importance of, is this reflected as well in how much companies are spending on security? The threats, the ever growing threats. I mean, or is it a question of you can never eliminate them? I suppose. Is it a question of managing them?
One of the most interesting things about cyber attacks and data breaches right now is that hardly anyone is going to admit to the fact that they have been compromised.
Uh,
Every once in a while, we do hear of some of the big attacks, especially companies that have a huge what you call this, a huge public interest aspect
mm,
or a huge number of users. So most recently, it was South African Airways that actually had a huge attack, around their digital infrastructure. We've also had MTN and Cell C admitting earlier this year, just a couple of months ago, that they were breached. Some of the estimates that are out there is the fact say that, especially if I cite a report by Checkpoint, they actually estimate that cyber attacks are costing South Africa 1% of
mm.
GDP.
Wow,
And if you
that's
think of South
insane.
Africa as being a, let's call it a 4.5 to 5 trillion rand economy.
Mm.
1% of that number is
That is
a
staggering.
it is a staggering number. So those are some of the estimates that are out there. Another data point that I would just throw out there is that some of the insurance companies have actually reported that right now they have been seeing a huge upswing in
Yeah.
terms of claims. The likes of Allianz have actually said that South Africa ranks as 14th in the world when it comes to the biggest claims
Human.
related to data breaches. So you're a company, you've taken out insurance on being attacked,
Mm.
because when you are attacked, it's going to cost you money, right?
Of course. Yeah.
So people are now taking out insurance around this, and South Africa is the 14th most claimed market in the world when it comes
Wow.
to these claims around breaches. So I hope that gives you a flavor of the financial cost
It sure
that is
does.
there right now.
It
Yeah.
sure does. And the fact that we are ranked that high in terms of the size of claims, is that point to the vulnerability of our systems, or more to the level of activity amongst these hackers?
So we often talk about the duality of the South African economy,
Mm.
right? And it's the developed part of that economy that tends to attract a lot of the cyber criminals out there, right? Because, for example, it becomes very valuable if you can infiltrate banking data, banking records, banking activity,
Mm.
because South Africa has one of the most sophisticated financial services markets in the world,
Mm.
right? So that becomes a draw for these bad actors. That's one. Another one is government, right? Government right now is said to be the most attacked entity in South Africa. And some of the reasons that have been given out there, I remember we engaged with Accenture recently, and they were talking about the fact that it's simple things, right? What we're talking about just now, that you don't necessarily have to attack the government. You
Mm.
can just attack a government employee.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
many instances, you've got government departments that are using machines that are still running Windows XP, Windows 7.
Mm.
So the security protocols on those types of machines are not where they're meant to be in
Mm.
2025. So if you go and you attack, let's say, some government department, some back office somewhere, you get into there, now you have access out there. And that's one of the reasons why people, are saying that government should be doing a bit more to protect itself.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating stuff there. Wow, thank you so much, Mudia, for that and breaking it down for us. Fascinating stuff indeed it is. And yeah, I really appreciate it, man. We'll chat again soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Didi.
There you go. Mudiwa Gavaza, he is our tech expert and our tech hour. They're talking about, this is what has been called the largest data breach in history, which involved 16 data relating to 16 billion pieces of data, I think it is, with about 3.5 billion passwords that have been compromised like this. I'm even too scared to go and check, and it's those sites that Mutiwa shared with us. I just feel like, oh my goodness, the last thing I would want to know is that this somebody is about to clean out my bank account. I'd rather just it happen than me wait in anticipation for it to happen. No, but then maybe you can, if I know about it, I can change my passwords quickly. Sure, yeah, no, I must go and have a look.